Hey there riders, MotoGeno Chris here today, and I am out on MotoHub in Castle Hills Norden 901 demo machine. So this is a bike that you can go and test out, and I thought I'd give my first thoughts about this particular machine. I haven't ever ridden the 890 Adventure or the 890 Adventure R, and of course this is the Husqvarna version, which has a couple of extra inclusions which do make it stand out. And on top of that, obviously the styling is a huge departure from what we get when we look at the KTMs. And to me, that is a real winner because I find the KTM styling that little bit too futuristic for me. And certainly looking at an adventure bike like this, I feel like the looks of the Norden are kind of more in line with what I prefer as a rider. Now, talking about the overall package here, obviously we're getting WP Apex suspension, full adjustability on the front. We do have a preload and rebound adjustable rear shock with an external preload adjuster. This has a parallel twin engine in it. It's the 899cc, nice, kind of smooth, fairly torquey engine. Only 105 horsepower, but this thing is really actually quite a bit of a weapon. It just perhaps, doesn't have the ridiculous power that we might see on the superbikes these days. As far as the usability, I think this power plant is an enormous winner. It really is really kind of fun to use in all conditions. It's good around town. Once you get out into the twisties, it's quite punchy. You do want to keep it in that media part of the rev range. Really fun in that regard. And then also it's got a pretty good stonking top end on it as well, which will carry you up to pretty high speeds. Certainly well within what I would want and well past that. So in that regard, really good. The seat height on this as well, I know with adventure bikes, because they need to have a fair bit of clearance, this has got about 250 mils of clearance, which is quite a generous amount. The seat height is often a concern for a lot of riders. 854 millimeter seat height, I'm a 32-inch inseam. I find it very, very manageable, nice and comfortable. It's nice and narrow at this point between the seat, even though where your legs will be when you're sitting on the bike is a fair bit wider. So as far as the adventure side of things and the taller seat height, I find this bike really quite manageable, which is a little bit of a surprise to me. I jumped on this bike and thought, wow, nice low seat height, obviously wide bars, a little bit of wind protection, good vision through the mirrors, but it did not feel like a 900 or 1000cc bike. It felt more like maybe a 500 or 600cc bike. That is carried across with the road handling, because keeping that weight down low with those fuel tanks, which is like we see on the KTMs, just makes such a big difference to the feel and the agility of the bike. Now this is a very stable machine, I will say, on the road side of things. Really the road holding was great. It had that real mechanical feel of stability, which is something that I personally love. I would actually say, kind of putting inputs through the bars, there was a very solid feel through the bars, so I wasn't feeling like the bike was flighty at all, but I also wasn't feeling like it had that feel that a lot of adventure bikes have, where they're quite top heavy, and then when you're leaning them over, you're feeling that top heaviness. On this, it feels like a much sportier machine. And really, I was just blown away at how well it carries the weight and how it doesn't feel like a big, tall adventure bike. It feels like quite a sporty machine that really is only just kind of tipping into that taller style machine. And obviously that's because they keep the weight nice and low. The brakes are exceptional, really nice, powerful brakes. Obviously there's these huge rotors on the front, and at the moment I'm just talking about kind of the road side of things. So whether the more powerful brakes are going to be something that I enjoy quite so much on the off-roadish kind of section will be something else, but the level of braking power there was good. Not crazy bite, but a nice amount of bite, just what you want. Nice lever feel, easy modulation, that power comes straight on. There's no kind of delay or anything like that. It's just a really nice, instantaneous, really direct feel to those front brakes, which are powerful. Rear brakes, good for a little bit of slowing down and control, which certainly will be interesting to see how that goes on the off-road. But as far as the road side of things, I did notice when I was knocking it down using the quick shifter through the gears, the ABS was giving a little bit of kick at that lever because I was quite often carrying a little bit of that rear brake through. But honestly, just such a well sorted machine, and certainly the forks are very well supported onto those brakes. There's not a crazy amount of dive. Interestingly, I'll say on the road through the lower speed stuff, you do feel the bike has kind of like a bit of a supple feel to it over the lower speed stuff, maybe around 60 kilometers an hour. But then when you start pushing the bike harder, it kind of just settles down, and again, very, very sporty, beautiful feel to it. And certainly one thing I will mention, it's got this cool TFT display. We've got a power plug there on the front, a 12 volt, and there are a number of kind of additional features on the bike. The cruise control is going to be really useful for touring riding, and that kind of ties in to one of the other things I really love about this bike. Obviously the rider seat is great, but there's also a really generous pillion seat on the back here with some good grab rails, and obviously a rack which is going to be ready for luggage. And that does mean that this is kind of a much more suitable 2-up machine. I could have so much fun through the local twisties and on the local roads on this particular machine, and I could buy it as a 2-up tourer, and I'd also have an adventure bike all in the one package. So to me, I think the fact that it's got the really good kind of pillion capabilities by the looks of it is going to be a huge boon. And again, I think being able to stretch up to that 25K mark, if you've got someone else who's going to be on the back with you, makes it a lot easier. And if you want the Explorer riding mode, which gives you a little bit more adjustability within some of those electronic settings, that'll set you back about another $320. However, kind of the standout with the quick shifter, the cruise control, and the Explorer, if you pay for the Explorer, which obviously adds an extra $320 onto the bike price, that is actually features that you have to pay quite a bit more for on the Adventure R. So in some ways, I think the Norden actually is going to offer great value for somebody over the 890 Adventure R. Perhaps this may not be quite as like crazy off-road, but again, it's just going to depend on whether that suits you as a rider or not. Okay, so I was super impressed with the Norden 901 on the road, and to be honest, after bringing it down the dirt road here to St Albans, or most of the way to St Albans, that has just been really reinforced in that the same kind of areas that I think the bike performs so well on the road really do transfer onto the off-road and to the adventure side of things. And while this is a fairly easy kind of route to come down, you could do it on a regular motorcycle. It was the easiest, I would say, I've had as far as a run, and I've come down here on bikes like the Tenere 700 and the KLR 650, and certainly the Norden 901. I would never guess that this was a mid-capacity adventure bike with a 900cc power plant in it, or weighing over 220 kilos. It's really far closer to the WR250R. While it's not quite as lightweight and not as easy to throw around, the simple fact is the way this bike carries its weight is so low and so easygoing and so confidence inspiring that it really is just exceptional. And I was even just sitting down in sections where I'd normally be standing up on the bike because the suspension, it handles the rougher bits of the road nicely. Even the bigger bumps were no issue whatsoever. Although certainly I think a little bit of tweaking might help there because some of the bumps were enormous, but I should probably have been avoiding them more than anything else. Those powerful front brakes, surprisingly enough, because there's just so much control and feel, they're very easy to use in these kind of conditions. You wouldn't want to be grabbing a handful of them, but they are very, very usable, as is the rear. Using the quick shifter down through the gears to use a bit of engine braking into some of the corners, certainly I was noticing that the ABS was just giving me a little kick to let me know. But honestly, the bike was so well sorted, it was so confidence inspiring. It feels exceptionally light. The ergonomics as well for the off-roading, just as they're nice and relaxed on the road, they are perfect for off-road as well. You can jump up on those pegs, you can stand up on the bike. It's very easy to grasp and very natural to grasp, and your weight is down through those pegs. So you've got nice light arms, no weight through the bars whatsoever. It's a very natural feel. For me, again, 180 centimeters, 32-inch inseam, perfect. It was just really perfect. And again, I'm not really an advanced or even an intermediate adventure rider. I'd say I'm an entry-level adventure rider. So if you're considering one of these as someone upgrading from your first motorcycle and you're thinking, perhaps the 901 is going to be a little bit too intimidating, I would say the opposite. I would say definitely grab one of these. I think if you're just past that 390 adventure stage, the Norden 901 makes an enormous amount of sense. And while it's a more premium motorcycle and it is going to cost you a little bit to get onto one of these, honestly, the road capabilities with that adventure capability, to me, particularly as someone who's a less experienced adventure rider, this is the bike to be on. It is really, really quite exceptional. I'm just going to jump on the bike real quick. I'm on a bit of an incline. This isn't the best place to do it. I did have to dig that stand in a little bit to get the bike to sit here, but it did it no issues. Hopefully, as you can see here, I am keeping a little bit of weight this way on the bike to keep it on the stand, but a very natural seating position, nice seat to peg ratio, nice reach to those bars. The bars are brought quite a way back towards you. However, the obvious reason for that is because when you're standing on the bike, you definitely want this machine to still have a great ergonomic for the adventure riding, where you're going to be standing up if you're doing some more serious riding. And certainly, let's see if we can jump up. Again, it works perfectly. The reach to those bars is nice and light. I'm not actually putting any weight through the bars whatsoever. I'm grasping on with my knees. It's a natural weight through the pegs. The ergonomics are just perfect, and for looking down the road in front of you, it just works. It absolutely works. On some of the machines, I just feel like they have too much power. However, on this, that's certainly not the case. I can see there being way more power than I'm currently using, but I can use what's there just fine at a basic level, and that's awesome. So certainly, as far as conclusions go, I would absolutely own one of these in a heartbeat. And if I wasn't focusing more on a lot of the beginner bikes and I just wanted a single bike in the garage, this would be it. I could do 2-up riding with my wife on the back. It's well equipped for that. It's got a beautiful amount of power. Not insane, but more than enough for my general use and for 2-up riding. It's also just tuned beautifully. It's nice and smooth. The engine braking is nice. The throttle response is good. It's fairly gentle down low, but that develops into a really nice punch of torque through most of the mid-range, and that continues quite far up. You can rev it quite hard as well. Beautiful brakes, great suspension. Suspension does feel, as I mentioned in the road section, a little bit softer at the low speeds on the road, but once you're moving and you're having a bit of fun on the bike, it's great. It was exceptional in these kind of rougher conditions. Could possibly firm up the front a little bit for some of the bigger bumps that I couldn't avoid. Realistically speaking, with the adjustability and the suspension, I'd be so happy to own one of these. Again, if you're upgrading from an entry-level bike and you want something that's adventure viable and you want to do everything bike, check out this Norden 901. It really is exceptional. From my perspective, I'm not the fastest road rider, and as I said, I'm more on the basic end of things than the adventure side of things, and that's why I bought a WR250R. However, honestly, I think if I had ridden one of these, I probably would have saved the money for the WR250R and picked up one of these as a do-it-all bike. For the pure like single trail stuff, I've no doubt the WR250R is a better bike, but the overall package on this is amazing. Tourer, sporty through the twisties, great for the adventure by the looks of it, especially for the more basic adventure, but I've seen people take these on incredible things, so I've no doubt if my skills increase, I'll be able to take one of these in the same areas. And realistically speaking, it just does everything. And the areas where I would normally think, you know, it's heavier, it's a bigger bike, everything like that, the design of the bike has minimized that to such an extent that that's not really a concern, having now ridden one. Anyway, if you're interested in one of these bikes, seriously go to MotoHub, check one out, see if you can get a test ride on one. They're really exceptional, really exceptional. I would, in a heartbeat, have one of these in my garage as it stands. While that's not on the books at the moment, perhaps in the future, because I think this would be really something great to work towards. Let me know if you've got any questions down below in the comments. As always, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.